Hi, Coach Cole here to show you in 14 minutes a detailed way of practicing all 7 strokes by yourself without a tennis ball. This is so important because this gets a repetition on. You have to do this every day, just for a few minutes each day, the same time, the same place, and the results of this kind of practice are just phenomenal. So here it goes.
We start with a split step. Then it's step out to the side with the forehand, freeze. Did you see how I stepped sideways with the right foot? So if you look carefully, split step, nice and high off the balls of your feet, the feet going a little bit sideways. I step with the right foot, getting behind the ball, but at the same time, my shoulders and my body pivot to the side. So we call this a step and pivot. We really get behind the ball. We want to get in alignment of the ball. So even if we don't step forward, we're still going to make the volley. So that's why we have this critical step. So that's the step and pivot. Notice that the racket face is vertical. Notice that the right elbow is bent because we're going to go from bent to bent. Notice that my knee is bent. I'm low. I've got below the ball. And then I'm stepping forward and it's stepping forward. If you notice carefully, you'll notice that it is the body's momentum hitting the ball. Watch it again. You'll notice that it's the body's momentum hitting the ball, step and pivot. So that is very important when hitting the ball because it's a momentum shot. It's almost as if my left hip is hitting the ball, my elbow is bent, and my eyes are watching contact. Now it's the ground stroke. So now what we're going to do is the split step is the first step. Step and pivot is the second, then I separate. So that's the third step. Notice that both hands are on the same height. So this is one of the checkpoints. Both hands are at the same height. The elbow is bent here, the elbow is bent here. My right leg is straight. I have a closed racket face. This is normally pointing diagonally to the corner here. And it's almost as if I'm looking into a mirror and I can see my hat. Now go into the landing. You'll notice that when I went into the landing, it's called a 3-point landing. So let's just go a bit further back. You'll notice that when going back, my foot steps out, my racket drops down, and my butt drops down. And then I come up to contact. You'll notice now when I'm hitting contact, you'll notice that my eyes are looking at the contact point. I have a vertical racket face. And notice my arm is not totally straight. There's a small little bend in the elbow. And this hand is I'm using my left hand here to slowly use that as a target. So I'm going to extend through the ball, through the hit. And I'm not going to have the hand bend and go straight to my shoulder there. I'm going to try and extend through the ball as long as possible so I can have a longer hitting zone. Notice now that my left knee has straightened. So if you look, I'm coming down from below contact point over here. You notice that this is the lowest point of the swing from the landing. And if you notice from the 3-point landing, you see how low the hand is? It's almost going past my right knee. And if contact point's where my left hand is right now, so you see how it's coming up to make contact with the ball. There is contact point. You see how I left the mouse there? It's coming through contact. Notice that the left knee is now straight. My heel is pivoted. That means my hips are turning. My eyes are still looking at contact. And I'm lifting the ball over the net. So this is contact. I hold it in that position for a while. And then I come through, extending up and over to a high follow through. Notice that the whole arm stays straight for as long as possible, and then I come up and I finish up high. Notice too that I've dragged the foot up a little bit. Notice the heel is facing the back fence, and you see how my hips are facing a net now at the end of the swing. And that is the forehand ground stroke. And finished. Now back to a ready position. Now the most important thing is we're going to turn sideways, so we're going to get ready for the backhand, but we're going to flip my body a bit. I'm going to do the split step and then the step and pivot. Now you'll notice that there is a grip change. So just split stepped, you didn't see it, and then step and pivot. Notice how my body is turning nicely and slowly. I'm getting behind the ball. Notice the racket is racket head height. Notice that I've had a grip change. Notice that it's a vertical racket face, and notice how the left foot is stepped out wide, making sure that I get behind the ball. I've bent my left knee and my left elbow is bent. So notice that I keep this elbow bent through the hit and I keep this knee bent. So we say from bent to bent. And it's a pushing action because it's a momentum shot going forward. So we're going to step and hit. Notice that the elbow is still bent here. My eyes are looking at contact. Notice the racket head is the same height as my head. You'll notice if you're looking from the front that there's still a V action going on, and you'll notice that most of my weight is on my front foot. It's definitely a pushing action, and from here I'm going back to a ready position. Now split step again. Now it's a very similar movement to the volley, but now I'm doing a backhand ground stroke. So I still do the grip change turn. Notice it's like a straight arm doing a chest pass to the left hand side. Let's do it again. Grip change, you see the chest pass, you see how my arms straighten there. Let's go back a little bit. See from my ready position here, you see how I still have my elbows bent a little bit away from my body, but from this ready position I'm going to push my ball, push my hands away from my body, straightening my arms, a chest pass diagonally, and notice how the grip stayed with my left hand, but it changed on the right hand. It's now on grip number 1 to the right of 1 on my right hand. I'm stepped in pivot, and now I'm going to turn a little bit more. Now I have a bit of a closed racket face here. It's on edge. I'm hiding the racket behind my body. I have a straight arm here, and I have the left arm bent. I have a straight left leg here, and my heel is facing back there. Now I'm going to go into the landing. So I'm waiting a little bit here, and then a 3-point landing. So this foot is going to step out. You're going to notice my butt going to drop down. At the same time, the racket's going to drop. So that's why we call it the 3-point landing. See how that dropped? Let's go back a bit again, and you can see it. Step forward and dropped. It's a landing. You see how close it is to that left knee, so I've really gotten below the ball. You'll see that I'm making contact with the ball over here, so you'll notice how the hands have really got below the ball. Now, that is the landing. One of the things you'll notice about my 3-point landing, did you see how far forward I did step? I stepped quite far forward. It's very important to have a nice big step forward into the shot. Let's go again. You really want to step forward nice and deep right into the court, so you have a nice weight transfer coming through contact. Notice how my right knee is straightening out now. My head's still looking at contact. I want to have a vertical racket face. See how the back foot is adjusting a little bit? Notice how the back heel is facing the back, and there's my head not moving much from contact. That is the contact point. I'm normally going to freeze there for a little bit, and then I'm going to come right up to the follow through and finish up high. You see how I dragged my back foot and I made any adjustments with my back foot. So that's a good place to finish off. That's the backhand ground stroke. Now I do a split step. Notice very carefully that the left finger now is on the racket right now, on the strings. It normally is if I'm doing a double-handed backhand near my grip, but now because if I'm doing a single-handed backhand, this would always be my ready position. If I'm volleying, this is normally my ready position because I normally do a backhand, a single backhand volley and an overhead. So my fingers are on the strings, but my elbows are still away from my body. And now I'm going to do my chest pass turn. So you'll notice that I straighten my chest pass turn. That's the first checkpoint. And now the second checkpoint is turn and pivot. So now if you look carefully, my finger is still on the string here, but you'll notice that the racket is slightly tilted back, and I'm definitely showing a lot of my back to my opponent. And now you're going to notice a curved stroke, a bow-shaped swing to get a nice underhand backhand. So it's going to go forward now. See how I tilted it back now? I pulled it back to get a bit more underspin. And now I'm going to come forward, and you're going to notice the swing's going to start soon. See my weight stepping forward. I have a straight arm using the lat, stepping forward. Now you look at the shape of the swing. You see how it's going down. Trying to get a nice contact point. The racket face is going to be slightly open on contact. Doing a U-shaped swing, a smiley face swing, and then I finish at the end of the swing. Notice that I haven't moved my head much. Notice that I'm finishing with a straight arm. Notice that my left arm is facing back. Notice that my leg is now straight. So I've really had a bow-shaped swing or a smiley face-shaped swing, whatever you want to call it, but that is the follow-through. Notice that this racket is on this side of the body. I have not pivoted my body around. My belly button is facing the side of the fence. Now I'm going to go back to a ready position. Now this is for the overhead. You're going to see the step back. Now very often I've included a little bit of footwork now, so I'm going to pivot. Now if you look carefully, I turned sideways and I did a grip change. So let's go back a bit. This is a very important step here because as I step back with my right foot, I tilt the racket and there is a grip change. So I turn from my forehand grip to my continental grip, which is similar to the serve. So I'm stepping back. At the same time, I tilt the racket 45 degrees. I make sure my elbows drop and I keep the grip change. So this, you'll notice that now I have a continental grip here. I turn a little bit of my shoulders to my opponents and I'm waiting for the ball. Now the next thing you'll notice now is that there's going to be a small crossover step. Watch carefully. There's going to be a small crossover step because very often when somebody's trying to lob you, you really have to move back first to get behind the ball. So you see the left foot crossing over in front of the right foot. See how that worked out? And so you're waiting for the ball, and then at the last minute, you point with the left arm, which normally you point to the contact point. Then when that happens, you start brushing your hair, or otherwise known as cobra. So the wrist starts doing the cobra. Then you'll notice that my knuckles of my hand goes to my ear. So we'll call that answer the phone, but it's not one of the modern cell phones. We're talking about the old telephone. It's almost like knuckles to the ear, as if you lightly punching yourself in the ear. Not that you would punch yourself, but just the knuckles going to your ear. Eyes looking at contact point. Now it's still going up to contact. So you'll notice now that it goes up to contact, and you'll notice that there's an X up there. One of the reasons why we have this X up here is to make sure that the arm breaks and then the wrist stays here and then the racket pivots going over the wrist. So to make sure that all the momentum stops in the right arm and the racket accelerates through. So we're going to let the racket head come through. Now this is the X, and then we're going to go through. Now this next pivot that you're seeing right now is called the wristwatch, where you've got to imagine you've got a wristwatch in the back of your hand and you want to show your opponent the wristwatch. Let me see if we can find that in another view for you in front. I think we've got it a little bit in front for you. Let me see if I can find it for you. So it goes to the ear. Do you see how my palm is down? And then there is the X. Look how the wrist is pivoting now. Look how the left arm is up here. Look how my head is still looking up. This is where I make contact, and you'll notice that my shoulders are still facing 45 to the side. That really helps with the continental grip. Now, as I make contact, this is where I make contact. I want you to see the wristwatch. Now, imagine there's a wristwatch in the back of my hand. There is the wristwatch. You see the wristwatch? That's what I call the wristwatch, which pivots, pronates all the way to the edge. And then the last movement is we call sheathe the sword, where we let the racket drop down to the hip. And at the same time, have you noticed that the eyes are looking up to the sky? And that is very important. And now we're going to look at the serve. Now the serve, if you notice the serve is, I always want us to start with the ritual. So straight after the overhead, we're going to, part of the ritual is bouncing the ball. So normally you're going to do bouncing the ball. And this is also partly of leaning forward. Now, Steve normally sometimes says lean forward, but we like to say bounce the ball, part of your ritual. Get the ball and the racket together. Then we're going to be leaning back. And then what normally happens is the toss goes first. So there's the J toss with the left arm. Notice that my weight's still on my back foot. I'm transferring a little bit forward, but toss first. So toss first, which is the day toss. Then I'm going to do the brush or the cobra. You notice how the cobra, the wrist is going to be palm down, but this is where the cobra occurs. Coiling nicely. If you notice carefully, you see how that knee bent over there? See how I'm coiling? Brushing my hair. Answer the phone, X. See how it comes from the ear, palm down. Look very carefully at that palm down, that ear. The racket is palm down behind, and from there it starts coming up. Notice that my head is still looking up. I go to the X position, as I described earlier in the overhead. Then I do the wristwatch. See how I pronate the wrist there. Here is the wristwatch. And then I talk about sheathing the sword, which is right next to the left-hand side of my body. And that is what we call the 42-second tennis lesson. All the detail, a little bit of the explanation. In fact, there is a lot more reasons behind what we've done, but those are the primary reasons. I hope this has been very informative, and please, every time that you can, you practice this 42-second drill, maybe 3 minutes a day, which is about 4 times, and you'll see incredible benefits in a very short period of time. It's almost as if you're taking mini tennis lessons all the time, and in fact, you're just spending your time. You're not spending money, and that is